If you reject the conventional and embrace what's offbeat, guess what? It's time for Pillow Pete. 3 cheers! It's time for Pillow Pete. Fuck me! It's time for Pillow Pete.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Prattling with Pillow Pete. Today I have a very special guest on my show. I have artist Glenn Zimmerman, who worked at Paws Inc. for 30 years. I am completely blown away that I have him on the show. I'm very thankful. So, how are you doing today, Glenn?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no worries. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself further to the audience?
I think you did a pretty good job. But my name's Glenn Zimmerman. I used to work at Paws Incorporated, which is Jim Davis's studio in Muncie, Indiana, which is about northeast of Indianapolis. And that's about it.
That's incredible. So to start off, how exactly did you get into art? What made you decide to become an artist?
I wanted to be an animator ever since I was a kid. And this is back in the 60s. I went out and bought a little 8mm camera and built a little animation stand and was shooting very simple animation when I was 12 years old. It was just something I've always wanted to do. So after I played around with it for a while and treated it like a hobby, eventually I graduated school and got a job, and people started seeing some of my animation work, and I started doing some local TV commercials. Really simple stuff, but it was fun. And from there, this was I was living in Western New York at the time. And after that, I moved to Indiana, worked for an animation studio in Fort Wayne for a while, and moved down to Indianapolis and worked for an advertising agency in Indianapolis, doing more TV commercials. And the next thing I know, I'm getting a call from Jim Davis wanting to know if I wanted to help on a project. So that's how it all started.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome. So at that time, did you know who Jim Davis was? I'm not sure if he had any prior things to Garfield that you were maybe aware about that made you think oh yeah, I want to work for Jim Davis. How did that go down?
Well, this was mid 80s. Garfield was pretty popular. Garfield was very popular. He was everywhere. He was on everything, mugs, t-shirts, you name it, Garfield was on it. And at the time, Jim Davis had his studio where he produced the comic strip, but he also was in charge of producing artwork and designs for product. And this is right around the time he was releasing a bunch of the Garfield books. The TV show was on Saturday mornings, and there were a bunch of Garfield specials, and all the TV show and the specials were produced in LA by Film Roman. And Jim was like, well, he's got the studio here in Muncie. He wants to have his own animation studio. So right around mid 80s, he hired he went out and hired some animators, looked around, found a bunch of people. They got together, and one of their first projects was the Garfield 9 Lives TV special. You're familiar with that one?
Absolutely. I actually have the DVD of it right here.
There you go. Terrific.
It is my absolute favorite Garfield thing, probably ever. And I want to dive into that. It is such like a unique piece of animation. Like I want to know like as much information as you can possibly provide on that thing. Like like I guess to start off, like whenever you guys started working on it, did you guys know like going into it that it was going to be like something kind of like weird and experimental, or
Yeah,
did you think it
because
would be the usual Garfield TV special or like even like the show?
well, the book was weird and unusual because if you've seen the book, I don't know if you have the book or not. It's 9 different styles of illustration telling 9 different stories about Garfield and 9 different lives at different times in history. And Jim was like, if we do the special, I want to do the same thing. I want to make an animated special, the first 1 hour animated special, where each of Garfield's 9 lives was animated in a different style. So the plan was for his animation studio in Muncie, we're going to animate 3 of those 9 lives. And one of them was in a very realistic, not realistic, but a Disney style kind of full animation. And one of them was a very stylized, almost UPA, modern looking style. And the third one was just kind of watercolor treatment to the backgrounds, to the animation. Everything was very soft and very loose. And so he had his animators working on these 3 segments. The rest of the animation was done out in LA by Film Roman, but he had the animators working on these 3 sequences. And he started looking around, see if he could find some local talent to help, because he only had like about, I don't know, 4 or 5 people there working on this animation. And that's when I got the call that says, "Hey, you want to help us out on this special?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds great." I mean, I knew who Garfield was, I knew who Jim Davis was. I didn't know that they were right pretty much an hour away from where I was living at the time. So I said, "Yeah, sure." And so they sent me, like on one of the sequences, they sent me some scenes to animate. The guy there, they storyboarded it out, and they worked out all the action, and they sent it to me, and I got to animate it. And then they helped me with the animation, make sure. And at this point, there wasn't I wasn't drawing Garfield. I mean, it was a cat, an orange cat, but it was an entirely different style because it was Garfield in one of his different lives. So they had me help with some of the animation on that. And then one of them, the one that was more watercolor stylized animation, they wanted to know if I could shoot it, film it. Because where I was working, we had a pretty decent professional animation setup, camera and things. So I offered to shoot the animation. So the sequence in the special called Lab Animal is one of the ones that they worked on, and I helped with some of the animation on that. And then the other one that I helped on was called Diana's Piano. And if you've seen that one, it's like all the animation is soft dissolves from one frame to the next. It isn't just straight cartoon. It was just very soft, very almost dreamlike. So I helped shoot that.
That is incredible. And yeah, like that one specifically, like the like Diane's piano, that is like I remember the first time ever like watching that special. It's like you go in, it's like you're thinking like, oh yeah, it's just gonna be like usual Garfield, and it's like these stories. It's like there's a lot of like genuinely like just good like jokes and laughs in there, but like that one story in particular is like just I like it's actually like made me cry. Like it's like just unbelievably beautiful, and it's like it's incredible that like a character like Garfield, it's like could like be tied to something like that. It's like, and I think that's why I just love the special. Like overall, it's just all of these stories, seeing unique, stylized like forms of animation and just different stories. It blows me away to this day.
I know when they sent me the scenes to shoot on Diana's Piano, I'm looking through it and getting everything ready, and I get to that one scene and it's like, oh no, they're gonna kill the cat. It's like, oh no, it was terrible. It's just like, no. So yeah, I can see what you mean. It was a very emotional segment from the thing, and one of the segments that wasn't in the book. Now, the Garfield's Nine Live, the book, they actually took some of those sequences from the book and made them into specials, standalone specials. Babes and Bullets was one that was based on a segment from the book. So they had these open gaps, and Jim wrote that one story about Diana's piano, about the cat Diana, to add to that. And he wanted to do something that was different. He wanted to do something that wasn't, gag a minute. He wanted to have something that had a little bit of heart to it, a little bit of emotion to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say he absolutely, well, you all as a team definitely just achieved that 100%. Like, and speaking of, like, because obviously I know it was like Jim Davis's like own studio, but like it had to definitely get put on TV. Like, was there any kind of like pushback from like any like networks or studios saying like, oh, like this may be too weird, or just like it's not Garfield, like anything like that?
As far as I know, there wasn't any of that type of pushback. I mean, Film Roman, well, for one thing, he had the reputation. It was pretty much like whatever Jim Davis wanted to do it, because your specials are super popular, and the TV show on the Saturday morning is super popular. You want to do a 1 hour special that's unusual, yeah, go ahead. And Jim knew, there are certain things that you can't do. I mean, if you look at the, I think it was one of the stories in Nine Lives is pretty brutal. I mean, the cat grows this strange creature that attacks grandma, and it's like it's cool looking in the book, but no, they weren't going to animate that for a TV special. So he knew what he could or couldn't do on TV.
Yeah, that's just incredible that like that was able to happen. I mean, obviously, like I'm not like in the animation studio or animation field, I guess. So but like everything I hear now, it just sounds like there's like so much pushback. It's like I can't even imagine something like that even being made today for like really any character, unless like that's just like what the character is. It's like, but um, so that's
I think he actually got more pushback from the Saturday morning show, because
really
they had whatever it was at that time when Saturday morning was closely supervised, make sure there were no guns and there was no extreme violence and things like that. And so he got a lot of pushback from some of the stuff from the Saturday morning show. But as far as I know, no, Nine Lives went exactly the way he wanted it to.
not bad. That's interesting. I honestly never even imagined there'd be pushback on like the show, because like I mean, like I've seen like at least like a decent chunk of it, and like it's good, but like I mean, it's not like it's like some kind of like grand like offensive thing. I mean, it's Garfield, but so it's definitely interesting to hear that. So like, what other kinds of like projects did you do like while working there at Paws Incorporated?
Well, I was working on Nine Lives. I still didn't work for Paws. This was like a freelance job. And when Nine Lives was done and delivered, that's when Jim called me and said, "Hey, you want to come and work here full time?" So, and this was in '89 is when I started working there. And the first project, by the time I got there, all the animators that he had hired, all but one, have decided we don't want to live in Muncie, Indiana. We want to live on the West Coast where all the cool animation projects are. So they all left. So by the time I got there, it was me and another guy were the animation department. And the first project that they gave us to work on was taking the Garfield Christmas special and enhancing it, kind of adding scenes to it, tightening up the editing on it, and creating new scenes, stuff. When Jim writes a special, I've heard this one, whenever he writes any of the specials, he usually ends up with like 45 minutes for a 23-minute half-hour TV special. So there's plenty of extra. And then it's up to Roman to go through and whittle it down until it fits into the time slot. So we had all this extra story that he had written for the Christmas special. And he always wanted to add some of that stuff back in. So that was our first project, was to take the existing Christmas special, tighten up the editing on it a little bit so we could gain a little bit of extra time to throw in a couple extra sequences. And one of the sequences that was added to that one was Grandma playing on the piano. They wanted to do something funny where Grandma sits down and plays the piano. So we got to create that scene, put that scene together, and animate it. Now the finish was still done in Roman. We'd send it to Film Roman. They would take everything and ink and paint it and shoot it. But that was one sequence that was added to the special. The other thing was, are you familiar with the Christmas special?
Yeah, it's been a little while since I've watched it, but I have seen it a good handful of times.
There's one scene where Grandma's sitting in the rocking chair talking about how she misses her husband, how he misses Grandpa. And it's a beautiful piece. Again, it's very, very sentimental, very emotional. And Jim really liked that sequence, but in the animation, it was the continuity was so far off. It just bothered him. You'd go to a close-up of Grandma and there'd be snow falling outside the window. You got cut to a wide shot and there's no snow falling, things like that. So he wanted to go through and clean that up and add a few things. So that was one of the things that we worked on. We went through and cleaned up the animation, cleaned up the direction, added a couple scenes. There's one scene where you actually see a photo of Grandma and Grandpa that's sitting there on the mantelpiece, and I actually got to design Grandpa. It's like, here's a character you're never going to see anywhere else. He's never going to show up on the strip. He's never going to show anywhere else. So Jim says, "Sure, put something together." So I designed Grandpa and stuck him in there. So and things, just things like that. And another interesting part was Grandma sitting in a rocking chair, just slowly rocking. And the animation that was originally done, she's rocking like a madman. She just really, really fast. And Jim wanted to slow that down. And I'm thinking, I don't want to animate a rocking chair. Grandma's fine, but I don't want to animate a rocking chair. Well, we had a very simple, very early version of a CG program for building CG models. So I went ahead and built the rocking chair as a CG model, animated it, printed those out, traced the printouts onto animation paper, and solved that problem. So I could get the rocking chair to move nice and slow, and it looked good. It didn't wobble all over the place. So I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, that's an interesting technique, like certainly. And I like that you pointed out like how Jim would like go back through just to like see like just like small details like that, because like I always wondered, because like Garfield, like anything, like whether it was the show or the specials, compared to everything else that like I've seen from like that time period, unless it was like a big budget like Hollywood movie, it's like certain things, a lot of things like looked cheap, but it's like Garfield, it's like the animation's like really nice, like it definitely holds up. And like knowing that like Jim would like personally go through and like want things fixed like that, it's like it makes sense. I mean, he definitely like paid very good attention to detail, it sounds. And so that makes sense now that it's like, oh, okay, so that's why it actually looks good. It's like they probably would have been fine with it like having errors like that, like scene to scene, but it sounds like he definitely knew what he wanted.
Yeah, once again, it's like, that's what Jim wanted to do. So Roland was like, "Sure, we'll give you the money to do it."
Yeah. So in terms of the specials, I'm aware there was one that was called Garfield's Judgment Day that like never got like actually produced. Like, do you know anything about that special?
Oh yeah, everybody talks about Judgment Day. I mean, it was like, when I was there, it was like all the audio was recorded, the music or the songs were written and recorded. parts of it were storyboarded. I mean, it was pretty well developed as a feature. It was going to be a feature film, and it fell through. I mean, nothing ever happened. But he's got all this music. He's got all this dialogue recorded. He's got the story all laid out and the storyboard. But nothing happened. So it just sat there. Eventually, they made it into a book. They just took some of that and put it together into a book. And but Jim was like, all right, well, they didn't like that one. I'm going to write another treatment for a movie, Garfield movie. And this one was called Chicken Story. And it's about, I don't know, Garfield goes to the, from what I remember, Garfield goes to the farm, John's parents' farm, and there's a revolt of chickens. That's about all I know on that one. All I know is Jim thought, chickens are funny. Let's make a movie about, funny chickens. And so it reached a certain point, and that one, another one that we just played around with, but that never went anywhere either.
That's like, it's honestly like a shame, like especially with like Judgment Day, because like everything like I've heard, I'm like, man, it sounds like it would have been great. It's like I wanted to see that made, but like I mean, at least heard the other specials. Like I love all of the specials. Show's definitely a lot of fun. And I know you said that Jim just thought chickens were funny. Is that like why he had like Orson's farm? Like, like did he just love like just farm characters? I assume like it just loved doing that.
Yeah, he was just. I mean, he grew up on a farm, and they had these characters in his head that he just said, let's make a farm strip. So there was Orson's farm for a while. U.S. Acres was the comic strip, and it lasted a while, just a year or so. But it was good because they added that to the Saturday morning show. They had another segment that they could add to the Saturday morning show. Yeah, but it's just fun. Because he grew up on the farm and he had all this. It's just something that he knew, so it was natural for him to come up with a comic strip based on farm animal. Yeah. I guess.
That is interesting, and like along with that, it's like hearing, because like I was aware like he grew up like on a farm. It's like it's kind of inspiring to me because like I live in like a rural area, so I'm just like, well, I mean, somebody like Jim Davis, it's like, I mean, he grew up on a farm. It's like I didn't grow up on just like a farm like that, but like everyone around me had farms. So I'm just like, maybe one day I could do something like that. It's like it's kind of inspiring. It's like most of the time it's like you hear people and it's like it just sounds like they kind of start off like in a city. It's like they already have money and just stuff like that. So it's uplifting. And I guess like along with like all of the shows and the specials and things of that nature, I remember like prior to recording this today, you said like you've met like Lorenzo Music at least once. Like, can you tell me about like just meeting him and like maybe any of the other voice actors from any of the shows or specials?
There was a while there when we were making Garfield messages that go on your telephone answering machine. Now, you probably don't even know what a telephone answering machine is. It's the thing that sits there and records a message. If you call somebody, it records a message, but before it records, it will play a message back saying, "Hey, I'm not here. Please leave a message after the beep," things like that. So they made a whole series of Garfield messages where it's like, "Hey, I'm not here. I'm busy using the litter box," or whatever. I don't know. But they brought Lorenzo in from, he was visiting, I guess, or something. And they brought him in to record these wild lines of Garfield saying stuff to be used on the answering machine. So I got to meet him then. He's a nice guy. He's very, he's professional. He came in, got to do his stuff and left. He seemed like a nice guy. He's the guy that refused to have his picture taken. If you notice in any of the publicity shots and things like that, if you ever see a picture of Lorenzo sitting there, he's always holding a coffee mug up in front of his face. It was one of his quirks, one of his things. I think it's because he was Carlton the doorman. I don't know if you know that.
I think I may have a vague awareness. I'm not gonna lie, like I actually don't entirely know.
Well, there was the Mary Tyler Moore show that was on in the 70s. It was a sitcom in the 70s, and one of the spin-offs of that was Rhoda. Her neighbor Rhoda got her own TV show, and one of the characters on there was Carlton, the doorman. So she'd get a little message from Carlton, and the voice of Carlton, who you never saw, was Lorenzo Music. So, and this is before Garfield. This is before the Garfield specials or anything. This is early 70s. So he kind of had this reputation of, I'm a voice that you don't see. I think that's kind of why he did that when he started doing Garfield. It was kind of like, it was a publicity thing. So if you ever see a picture of the crew recording something and you see a guy sitting over there with a mug in front of his face, that's Lorenzo.
Gotcha. If I ever see any pictures like that, I'll definitely keep an eye out for it. Um,
But he was
so
nice. I got to meet him. I told you before that Tommy Smothers did the voice of Garfield for a short time, for a couple commercials. I never got to meet Bill Murray or any of the characters from the theatrical films that came out later. But that was about it. The only people that I really got to meet when I was working at Paws were comic strip people. So like Dean Young stopped by. Dean Young stopped by. He was working on Blondie, the Blondie comic. And I got to meet Kathy Guyswhite. She stopped by once. She's the one that writes the strip Kathy. And Lynn Johnson stopped by for better or for worse. And it was just kind of fun to be there. And all of a sudden, we're having lunch with the guy that draws Blondie. And it was like, oh, cool. I'm not used to that. I'm not used to meeting these people. And it's like, I know who these people are. I know their work. And it was just kind of fun to meet them.
yeah, that's I couldn't imagine that. Like
One
that.
of the more recent ones was Stefan Pastis, who writes his comic strip, Pearls Before Swine.
Oh,
And he stopped by once, and it's fun because when they stop by to visit, they'll do a little demonstration. So he's up there talking about and drawing his strip for us and telling about how it happened, things like that. And it's fun and it's funny. When Tommy Smothers was there, he had a singing act with his brother, but he was also known to be a really good yo-yo man. He knew how to use a yo-yo and do yo-yo tricks. So that was one of the things he did. The staff got together and watched Tommy Smothers do yo-yo tricks. So it's like things like that made it really kind of interesting.
yeah, that's incredible. Like like all of that just sounds like an absolute blast. Like, oh my goodness. That like I'm just blown away. It's like I can't even imagine it. um,
It was fun. I mean, it's just fun to meet these people that you've heard about for all this time, and it was just fun to. A lot of times, it was just fun to do stuff like that.
yeah. I guess aside from stuff like that, I know like a little bit ago you kind of like mentioned like Bill Murray and like the like theatrical films. Do you know much about like the production there? Like did Jim like was Jim like all for like Garfield being like a CG character like in a live action setting, or was he wanting 2D but like maybe Hollywood was like, I don't know, we need like a CG character to like sell it? Like, do you know anything about that?
The impression that I got was that some Hollywood came to Jim and said, "We want to do a Garfield movie," and he said, "Okay, let's do one." And they said, "Fine, we'll let you know when it's done." I mean, he wasn't he wasn't in charge of the story. He wasn't in charge of the design. He wasn't in charge of the fact that it was like, here's what we're going to do.
Oh,
Um, he wasn't really, other than giving them approval to use the character. and to make sure that he doesn't do anything that's not Garfield. Other than that, no, he wasn't that much involved in doing the videos or the movies.
Man, that almost like it just like breaks my heart almost hearing that. I mean, it's cool that like Garfield like was able to get like a movie like that. Well, I guess 2 movies, but like, man, it's like I can't imagine just having like a character. It's like, oh, we're gonna do the movie. Thanks. Like, that's, I don't know. I guess I really don't have anything else to say about that. I mean, that's just kind of sad, honestly. But I guess aside from like those movies, and like I know like you said, like you mostly worked on like the specials. There's like one Garfield thing that like has just always like seemed like completely out of place to me. And like I'll kind of elaborate.
Okay.
Like, so I have like this CD. I mostly associate Garfield with like jazz music and things like that, like even kind of blues. But there's like this one song, I think it was from, I believe around like the 90s. It was like called Cool Cat. And like it's kind of like, it sounds like this like rave song, and like it looks like there's like a music video. Like, do you know anything about that?
If I'm not mistaken, that was a segment from the Saturday morning show
Oh,
where they did a sequence that they wanted to make it look like a music video, or at least what a music video looked like in the 80s. And that's pretty much all I know about that one. I've seen it. I think it's funny, but yeah, that was from the Saturday morning show.
Oh, okay. I guess I just never saw the episode. Like I've seen like the segment, I suppose. And I'm just like, what is this? I'm like, this seems like just completely out of place. But I mean, I definitely liked it. But I'm just like, it's unlike anything else I've seen with Garfield.
Now there's a song on that CD called "Shake Your Paw."
Yeah.
Familiar with that? And that's from the Garfield special, Garfield Gets a Life. Have you seen that one?
I don't actually think I have.
It's one of the later ones. It's almost close to one of the last ones, where Garfield goes to tries to get a life for John, because John is just, having trouble getting a date and things like this. This is way before Liz. And one of the sequences is John and Garfield go to a disco, a dance hall, and one of the sequences is John dancing on the dance floor, and that was the music that went with that sequence where he's dancing, and I did most of the animation on that. So this is back when they would make the animated specials, and then they would ask us to help, ask the people of Paws to help. So me and another guy helped storyboard most of that special, and then when it came time to do that dance sequence, I told him I really want to do this. I really want to animate John dancing badly. I mean, really, really bad. And I sat up there and watched so many dance movies. Really, some really, really good ones, some really, really bad ones, and thought, yeah, I gotta steal from this one. Here's a little move from Footloose. Okay, I gotta have him do a little bit of Footloose. So here's another one from House Party or something like that. I gotta put all this stuff together. And if you look on YouTube, I think people have taken that whole segment with John dancing and kind of lifted it and put it on YouTube. And it's kind of fun to go in there and see that stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I remember doing that.
Yeah, like I believe I know the exact clip. It's the one like whenever he has like his brown suit on, it's like he's like doing this like with his hands and stuff. It's that clip,
Yeah.
right? Okay. I do. I have absolutely seen that clip. I haven't seen the special, but like I do love that. It's just like the dance. It is funny. It's.
I think I told you before that there's a sequence where John kind of struts up to the camera and whips his jacket open, and on his tie, he's wearing a tie, and the way it was storyboarded on his tie is Bart Simpson is on his tie. And I showed that to Jim, and he was like, sure, why not? At the time, The Simpsons were super popular. Everybody was talking about The Simpsons. I thought, let's throw that in there. What the heck? Film Roman said no. No. So they changed it to Garfield. They put Garfield's face on his tie. It's like, no, that's not nearly as funny, but oh well. What can you do?
I know. You see, I'd probably be just like John. I actually have a Simpsons shirt on right now. uh, uh, let me see. So I guess like beyond like all of the specials, I know like you've told me like you worked on some of like the online games, um, and like I definitely want to hear about like I guess like the process of like making those. But there's one in particular that just was like kind of funny to me. I believe it was yeah, it was called Garfield's Scary Scavenger Hunt. And there's like one section where it's like Lyman is just chained up like in the basement. Like and it's just like what in the world? Like this seems like unusually dark for like a Garfield thing. Like like did you make that?
We had fun with Scavenger Hunt. The game. It was just sitting down and coming up with ideas. It's like, okay, now he goes down to the basement. What's down there? Okay, well, there's a coffin down there. It opens up, and there's Dracula's in there. There might be a monster over here and over there. And I thought, let's put Lyman down there. And it's sure, why not? Let's just do it. So it was my idea to like stick Lyman in a cage or in a cell chained to the wall just for fun. And if you watch the game, I don't know if it's because we made a sequel to it, Scavenger Hunt 2, and there is a sequence where Lyman's head is in the oven. I think he opens up the oven. There's Lyman's head is in there with his tongue hanging out, and that's a scare. You open up the oven and see that, and it scares you. I think there's a sequence where Garfield pulls back the curtains of the shower, and Lyman's sitting in the shower. See, everybody wants to know what happened to Lyman. Everybody's saying, he disappeared from the strip. Nobody knows what happened to him. Jim was say these funny things about what happened to him. I thought, okay, let's just stick him in this game. What the heck? Why not? So yeah, we had a lot of fun. And Scavenger Hunt was the most popular game on the Garfield website. It was very cool for me to see. We get these analytics from the website, and it would tell us, 500,000 people played Scavenger Hunt last month. And I'm thinking, that's very cool. 500,000 people have played my game. So I thought that was kind of cool.
And that means that there's a chance 500,000 people saw Lyman just chained up in the basement.
Exactly. That's what's funny.
That is like, yeah. Can you tell me, like, I guess just about like the process of making those games in a whole? Because like I know you obviously animated, but like you were telling me, it's like you just completely program these games. I'm like, it's like how much were they making you do?
It just evolved. I mean, they had the Garfield website, which in the beginning was a very simple website. It was just, here's some pictures of Garfield, here's some information about Garfield. And then they came out with Flash animation. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's gone. It's dead now. Nobody uses it. But at the time, it was like, here's an easy way to add animation to your website. It just takes a small plugin, but you can actually have characters moving around on your website. So it's the Garfield website started out like that, where we would add these little bits of animation here and there on the site using Flash. And that's when we thought, let's make some games. What the heck? Why not? It'd be fun. So we created a game where Odie has to jump and catch the ball. They bounce the ball off the wall, and he's got to jump up and catch it. And then, okay, let's make another one. So we just made these simple little games in Flash, and eventually we thought, let's do something big. Garfield's Scavenger Hunt, Scary Scavenger Hunt. So we built that one, and it just took off. And it involves doing all the artwork and doing all the animation, but it also involves a lot of programming too. It uses, Flash had its own programming called ActionScript, which eventually became very close to JavaScript, similar to JavaScript. And I had to figure out how to do that. I had to figure out how to program this stuff. Now, fortunately, way back when I was, before I started working at Paws, I was familiar with computers. I had an Apple II computer, and I would write games on that all the time. Really simple stuff, but I was familiar with programming to a degree. So when it came time to write games for Garfield, it was like, yeah, I kind of got the feel for it. I kind of know. Plus, there are books. You go out and buy the books, and tell you how to do certain things, and that really helped. But yeah, it was a lot of work, but it was so much fun to see it when it was done. We tried to do as many of those types of games as possible.
Yeah, that's incredible. And like I know you were saying, it's like Flash is dead now. It's like it's such a shame. It's like there's so many things that we're tied to Flash. So it's like it actually it's almost like it's just kind of sad to me. It's like, man, it's like I actually wish I could just like go and like just mess around in like those Garfield games. But I think I've seen people who like upload like playthroughs, so maybe I can just at least watch somebody play it.
When you said there was a game you were curious about, I thought we were going to ask about Beat the Cheese.
No,
You know,
I mean, could you tell me about that?
I had to come up with a game. It's pretty much it's a whack-a-mole game where you got this big hunk of Swiss cheese, and these mice heads would pop out, and you got to whack it with a ham. So you've got this ham in your hand, and every time a mouse pops up, you got to whack it on the head. I was the one that came up with the name. It's called Beat the Cheese, see if we can get away with it. We did. That's one of them.
Oh man. Oh my goodness, that's great. Oh man. So I guess like overall, I think that definitely covers like a lot of Garfield history. I guess like the last like main thing I'd want to touch on is like towards the end, because I know I guess it's not so recent now, but at least like somewhat recently, like Viacom ended up buying like the rights to Garfield. Like, do you know much about like that? Like, I guess like just buyout. Like, was Jim and like everyone on the team just like pretty much ready to just like let go of Garfield, or like do you have like any information on that? I guess.
I have very little information on the buyout. I mean, I'm just a worker bee in the back, moving things around. All I know is that Viacom came in and said they wanted to purchase everything Garfield except the strip. They said, Jim, you're still in charge of the comic strip, but everything else we'd like to purchase. And he was like, okay. He had reached a point where it's like, as long as I can still do my comic strip, okay. So that's how that happened.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. All right. In that case, so I guess aside from like Garfield, like have there been like any other like shows or like properties that you've like worked on over the years?
You mean anything non-Garfield?
Yeah.
The only thing, when I first started working at Paws, they needed to find things for me to do. I mean, there wasn't that much Garfield animation out there. The website hasn't been developed yet. So they would allow me to do non-Garfield stuff. Most of it was local TV commercials. That's about it. So somebody would, one of the places that I worked for was a car dealer, and he would have these animated commercials for car dealers. So I'd work on that through Paws. But any other characters, no, that's pretty much it.
All right. Cool. Well, I believe that's everything.
One of the other fun projects that I worked on in around 95 or so, did an animated commercial for Honey Nut Cheerios. Honey Nut Cheerios had a promotion with Garfield, and they wanted to do an animated commercial with Garfield and the Honey Nut Bee. And the promotion on the package, the cereal box, was 3D pictures. So you'd flip through and you'd get the old red and blue 3D glasses, and you look at the pictures and everything had 3D. So I thought, if we're going to do an animated sequence of Garfield and the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee, I want to do the animation as traditional 2D animation, but I want all the backgrounds to be CG, built 3D backgrounds. And It's never been done before. And it was a hard sell to the agency. The agency, Saatchi and Saatchi out of New York, they were like, "Was this going to look good? Is this going to look right?" And I'm telling them, "Don't worry, it'll look great. It's okay if you can do it, go ahead." And it's like, "Yeah, it'll look great." I'd never done it before. I had no idea whether it would look great or not. In my head, it looked great. So I had to go through and build Garfield's living room, kitchen, everything in a 3D program, a very old 3D program. It's compared to what you can do now, it was pretty archaic, but at the time it was kind of cool. So I built the whole environment in 3D, but then on top of that, I would have 2D animation of Garfield. And it worked. It looked great. It was terrific. The animated Garfield and the bee in 2D against these backgrounds. And the whole concept is Garfield and the bee are in a race to get to the kitchen where the Honey Nut Cheerios are. Because Garfield's in their living room sleeping, and the bee says, "I bet you I can beat you to it." And they go running through the house and all the different things that are going by. It fit perfectly for this type of CG type of background. And it was animated by me and another guy for this 30-second spot. We hired a guy almost right off the boat from Ireland. He used to work for a bunch of studios out in LA, mostly Don Bluth's studio, as an in-betweener. And we hired him as an in-betweener because the animation, or the agency said, the animation has to be done full. Don't cut any corners. It's got to be full. So I would animate every other frame, and then the assistant would come in and do all the in-betweens to smooth everything out. He was really good. He was really a really nice guy, real professional. So that was, and then, the other thing was that all the animation, the 2D animation was inked and painted in computer, which is common now. Everybody does it, but at the time it was new. Even Disney wasn't doing that yet. And we had some software that would allow you to scan these drawings into the computer, and you lay the color in, then you could lay that against the 3D background. This is mid-90s. A lot of this stuff is new. People just aren't doing it yet. And it was just kind of fun to sit down and do something like that. So that was a fun project to work on.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like you were saying, from all the knowledge I've known, it's it's I didn't even realize all the way back then that kind of technology really existed. So that's incredible that you just were able to use that, especially just for a commercial advertising some cereal. And I'm actually gonna have to look up that ad because now I just want to watch it.
I may be wrong, but I think I'm the first one to actually do 2D and 3D, or 2D and CG animation mixed together in a commercial. I can't think of anybody else. Now you see it all the time. Now you see everything done in cereal commercials. But back then, I think it was new because the agency was like, "I don't know if we want to do this. That doesn't sound like it'll work." So I think I was one of the first ones. And the sad thing is, the only version I have of that commercial is a very low res QuickTime file, little video file. It's all I've got. It's a small image. It's kind of blurry. It's all I've got. I don't have any of the artwork. I don't have anything else.
Oh, yeah, that is
So
sad.
if you go on YouTube and look up Garfield Honey Nut Cheerios or something like that, you may find it. But what you see on YouTube that's all there is. That's all I've got.
Man, yeah, I'll definitely have to look around. If that's the only way I'll have to watch, I guess that's at least a way to watch it. Thankfully it's not complete lost to media.
Right.
And actually, now that you were speaking of Garfield crossing over with Honey Nut Cheerios for a commercial, that made me think. I remember there was I know Sonic the Hedgehog had a Honey Nut Cheerio commercial at one point, but I also know there was some it was a PC gaming pack that I think had 3 games that had it, and it was Sonic and Garfield. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that one. There was another game where Garfield, it was a Sega game, I think. Uh, it's almost like Garfield hops into the TV and starts reliving some of these adventures from his TV. Like one of them, he's in an Egyptian tomb, and another one he's being chased by vampires and things like that. The vampires are Odie, and I got to do some of the animation on that, which was interesting because I had to animate Garfield running, stop, looking around, jumping, crouching, all these loose animation just by themselves. And then they would take that into the game, digitize them, and add them into the game. And it was just kind of fun to see some of the stuff that I did in this game. You got to show Garfield getting bonked on the head. You got to show Garfield falling down. You got to show Garfield jumping and falling from a long distance. And every single thing you can think of to have them do, I had to animate each one of those separate, and yet so they all fit together in the game.
Yeah, it's really cool. That almost reminds me, because like I know there was some like old like Sega like Genesis games of like Disney movies. There's like an Aladdin game and things like that. And I've seen like interviews where I think it was like the same thing. They would like get the animators to like actually animate these things and then have the people who program the games actually like digitize it and like do like pixel art for it. So that's cool that like you had like kind of like the same process for that.
Yeah, I used the Aladdin game that you're talking about as reference. I would watch that over and over to see how, okay, he jumps and then he stops. And then when he stops, he's got to do something while he stopped. So they have him kind of looking around, things like that. So I use that game as inspiration, I think.
That's so cool. Like that's and wow. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. Like, was there anything else like maybe like you've experienced like while like working over, I mean, 30 years, that is a very long time. So like there's probably a lot like I just don't know about, so I can't even have any kind of questions to ask. Like, is there anything else you'd want to cover?
Oh, boy, that's pretty much it. The last few years that I was working at Paws, it was most of the time was spent on Garfield.com on the website, creating games for that, creating games that promote the movies, creating games for whatever, just anything, any type of product or content for the Garfield website. So that's pretty much all I had to do for a long time at Paws. They weren't doing specials anymore. About the only other thing I would say is at the very end, they decided they're going to do another Garfield TV show, Saturday morning TV show. They had the original Garfield and Friends, which was traditional animation. Everybody knows that one. And they had the new one of Garfield, Here Comes Garfield, or whatever it's called, which was at CG animation, which was all animated out in a studio from France. And when it was time to do the next season, they decided we want to do something different. We want to do something entirely different. It's not going to be CG, but it's gonna have a different look. So they decided they want to take Garfield and redesign them, make them look more stylized, more angular, but more fun. And we're going to do these 30-second gags, a bunch of 30-second gags strung together. So they're like really short, they have a start and an end, then on to the next one. 30 seconds, no dialogue. So it was just sound effects and music, but no dialogue. Nobody said anything. Garfield didn't have to open his mouth. We didn't have to hire, vocal staff, things like that, voice talent. And we were working on that right about the time when Viacom, Nickelodeon, stepped in and said, we want Garfield, and we've got our own animation studio, so you guys are, we don't need you guys. And the Dargaud, or the studio in France, they were upset. It's like, we put all this work into these little 30-second gags. What are we going to do with them? Are they going to disappear? And, at the time, Nickelodeon was like, oh, we don't know, we'll do something with them. And I think right now, if you go to the Garfield website on the Nickelodeon site, they have the little Garfield blackouts, these little funny 30-second gags. They're there now. So if you go to the Garfield section of Nickelodeon's site, you can see those there. So you can see what I mean about the design being a broad, so much different from the strip or anything else that we've done before. But that was the last thing I worked on with Paws.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. And like, actually, speaking of design, because like Garfield's like earliest designs, it's like, they had like the smaller eyes, like vastly different from like what Garfield like traditionally looks like now. Like, did you and like the team like have a hand in like deciding like, well, like what if we tweak like this design element of Garfield, or was it always Jim like saying like, oh, maybe we should try something new, and then like everyone else just had to follow suit? Like, how did like his design, I guess, overall just change over the years and things like that?
A lot of it was Jim. Part of it had to do with, we wanted to animate him for the TV special, so we want to make him look cuter. So they went with the bigger eyes and a rounder body. And I think it was, the story goes, Charles Schultz, the Peanuts our cartoonist, kind of told him, you got to get Garfield up on his hind legs and have him walk. And if you do that, you've got to change his legs so they don't look like cat legs, or like, human legs, or, or whatever, cartoon character legs. So that was one of the reasons that Garfield's body changed a little bit. And it was just, it just evolved, evolution of the character as it went along. Some of it worked better in on product, and some of it looked better in the strip. It was Jim's decision. Let's make his eyes different. Let's make him his feet bigger. Let's make him stand up, and things like that.
That's interesting. And like, I do find it cool because I'm not gonna lie, I honestly don't even have like a favorite Garfield design. I like elements like from like every iteration. It's like it's been like consistently good, like even though it's changing. So it's like I think that's incredible that like he was able to like keep Garfield. It's like changing him, but like just making him still like have like a very appealing and like recognizable design. Because like a lot of times, like I see companies, they like want to redesign characters, and it feels like they strip away everything that like made the character good. And it's like that didn't happen with Garfield. It's like, I think Garfield, it's like, even like right now, it's like he just has a good design. It's like, it's not bad like at all. So it's very
I know
interesting.
this, the guys from in France, when we were working on that last version of Garfield, they said, when this new design of Garfield comes out, expect a lot of people on Facebook and things like that to hate it. You're going to get a lot of hate, people, because anytime you change something, people hate it. And they were right. And it's like the people would look at it and say, yeah, this doesn't look like Garfield, blah, blah, blah. So it's nice to hear that that you like all the different versions of them.
Yeah, like I mean, even like those ones, because like I believe like in like your profile picture on Facebook, like is that like the most like recent design that like was kind of used for like those like short 30-second cartoons? Like he does look like a little more angular to some degree.
Yes and no. I mean, I designed that one because I wanted to have an action figure of Garfield in action that pushed the boundaries of what's done in the strip. So that was more of a personal thing that I did.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, hey, I like that one too. It's like even like your own personal thing. It's like you definitely like made him look good. So yeah, like I don't think there's been like a bad Garfield design, at least like in like the 2D like strips or like any of like the drawings. But I believe that's everything I wanted to cover today. Like, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come on to my show.
Thanks. It was fun.
Yeah.
I don't get a chance to reminisce about those days very much. So yeah, it was nice. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
You say you're born under a bad sign, got a reason to cry. The bad signs I was born under fill up the sky. Yeah, I'm a blues cat, and I'm broke from paying my dues. 'Cause when you got 9 lives, you got 9 ways to lose. Hey, I had me 9 lives, roll snake eyes again and again. And maybe this time I'll roll me a lucky 10, 'cause I'm a blues